Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week's edition of the WrestleWatch podcast. I am Ryan.
I'm Doug.
How you
How's
doing?
everyone?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I feel like I need to get out of town. I'll say that.
Oh yeah, why's that?
I don't know, it's been I was thinking back, like this was the week that I went to Revolution in Greensboro last year
Mhm.
for Sting's retirement, and I'm realizing that I probably haven't. I'm trying to think when the last time I went out of town for wrestling was. It might have been the Dynasty show in St. Louis.
Okay.
So I'm coming up on a year, and usually I bounce around a little bit more with traveling to shows, but I just haven't done it lately.
Hmm. Yeah, I now that I think about it, the last wrestling I went to the December Dynamite in DC with the Continental Classic. That was the last
Yeah.
one I went to. Um,
How long is how long is the commute from Baltimore to DC for that?
at that time of day, around an hour at most. When driving back from the show is like 35-40 minutes.
Okay. So
It's
that's not too
yeah, they're very
that's almost a
close.
local. That's basically a local.
Well, yeah, no, Baltimore and DC share like radio waves. Like they're not separate. They're really not separate cities.
Yeah.
It's mostly common with people in DC think that Baltimore is as far away as Toronto is. Um, but
Well, it's
that's
like
like you
okay.
with that's like you with Peoria.
I think it's a little longer than Peoria. Peoria is probably like maybe 2 hours,
Oh, okay, well,
but in Milwaukee is probably like 2 hours. So it's like I
Aurora.
would Yeah, Aurora's it's probably comparable to Aurora. Yeah. Then I guess my question here's my thought. Okay.
Gary,
What
Indiana.
there's no reason to go there.
You don't want to go to that casino on the
Yeah,
Skyway?
yeah, I'm sure that's lovely.
What were you gonna
Well,
say?
well, here's the thing. Okay, what is the time frame for you, like in terms of driving? Let's say driving. Just assume that. It's like what at what point would you say you're in a different like market and say like, oh, I went out of town for this show?
If I go to Philly, but Philly's like an hour and a half drive, so
Okay. So like hour
even
and a
then it's
half
not.
maybe?
Yeah, but even then, that's just like because I'm in the Northeast. Like
Yeah, everything is close and
everything is
bundled together
close.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like I could be an hour and a half and I'm Philly, I'm an hour into DC, and some people might think that's separate, but like it's not for DC and Baltimore. I mean, especially when you look at the way that the wrestling companies book shows or like musicians book tours, they act like Baltimore and Washington are the same market for those purposes.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Chicago that's kind of cool is that, everything like the next metro markets with Milwaukee out of the side, because Milwaukee
Yeah.
is only 2 hours, but like St. Louis is like a 4 hour drive. Detroit's a 4 hour drive. Minneapolis, I think, is like a 6 hour drive. Indianapolis is a 4 hour drive. They're all kind of the same distance, more or less, and they're all in that 4 hour range.
Yeah.
However, the cool thing is, and this is especially for like WWE and AEW when they run shows, they, Chicago has Amtrak service to all those cities, and every single one of them, I think every single one of them, the arenas are within walking distance of the station, so you can literally just get off the train
Not
from
Detroit.
Chicago. Yeah, Detroit is
Oh,
the
it is
Little
now.
Caesars Arena is right there.
Huh.
Or at least, and if it's not, you could take that with the Q train. Is that what they're called?
I can't remember the
Yeah, but you could.
overcrowding thing. Yeah.
I know for a fact you could definitely just walk over to like the Little Caesars Arena from the train. So that's the one thing that's nice is that like you could do it without a car
Yeah.
to like all these places. And
Yeah.
I've done it to most of them.
Yeah.
I've never done it to I've never done it to Indianapolis though because Indianapolis uh they only run like service like twice a week.
Mm.
So that's not really workable.
Yeah. I can get a train to New York twice an hour.
Yeah,
So.
that's nice. Well,
And
I
that's
could get the St. Louis runs like 6 times a day, so that's not too bad.
yeah, but it's like the same. It's like I can get to like within the span of 4 hours. It's just you to get to another major city that's not Milwaukee, which arguable. The fair's nice in the summer. But or is Summerfest? That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, Milwaukee really is just a very large Chicago suburb, if we're
But
being honest.
yeah, within that same distance, I would be within Norfolk, Richmond, DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll say this. This is why uh some of these promotions that are like struggling to draw in certain areas just need to stay like in like the Northeast Great Lakes corridor where there's just like large segments of population that are
Well,
very easy to travel around.
another thing I noticed is that both companies are essentially touring in the same areas at the same time,
Yeah. But I'll
which
even
might
talk
be by
about
design.
but even looking at like New Japan, like in some of like the weird
Well, yeah, they
uh
shouldn't be doing 3 shows in California a year. They should be doing maybe two, one in North, one in South, and then like Seattle.
yeah. It's probably a cost saving thing just because they're based in California that it doesn't cost as much to run. But yeah,
Maybe, yeah.
they need to knock that off because it's California is I mean I think this is the thing. A lot of people think California is like this great uh
Uh-oh.
wrestling state,
Okay.
and I think, and not to say it's not, it's got a history with that, but they got a lot of other things going on in California. It's like they got to compete with, as opposed to like the Northeast and the Midwest. You know, there's a when the weather is not great, a lot of people want to do something inside. It's a little bit easier to sell that. When the weather's great 24/7, 365 in California.
Oh, in San Diego, maybe, but not everywhere.
I don't know. I mean, even like up in San Francisco, it's like fall all year round.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say everywhere in California, the weather is nice. I think. I'll say this. I think I say this as someone who's like, I've been to Southern California a lot, and I've only
Yeah.
been to like San Francisco like once.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I feel like the weather's usually pretty good all around there, up and down the coast, right?
Um, Usually, yeah. Summertime in LA can be extremely hot. And then when you go inland, it can get very, very hot during the summer. Like all inland, not just like the Southern California inland, but like going up into like the Central Valley, it can get extremely hot during summer.
It is a dry heat though, which is like
Uh,
better.
in the north, it's not as much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, Florida obviously is like awful
Yeah,
for,
every reason.
yeah, for every reason. All right.
So speaking of, I guess speaking of New Japan, today's the headline part of today's episode is not about New Japan, but their sister promotion, Stardom. This is something that's interesting for the purposes of WrestleWatch, which is your only home, your only podcast dedicated solely to free agency in the world of professional wrestling. So we have right now coming up in a few days here on March 3rd. So I guess if you're in North America, it'll be tomorrow night, essentially, is the Loser Leaves Stardom match. And obviously, that got us peaked here at WrestleWatch.
Yeah, it's an important one to kind of at least talk. I feel like we would do a disservice if we didn't at least mention it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's actually a big weekend for Bushiroad in general because isn't the New Japan anniversary show
Yes,
this
at the
weekend too?
beginning of New Japan Cup season, yeah.
Yeah, because that's always what, March 4th, March 3rd. It's
Somewhere
right
around,
around it
yeah.
might be the same day. I'll be honest. Like I always remember it's like really early in March, and so a lot of stuff going on with Bushiroad. But obviously, the big talking point right now is Tam Nakano and Saya Kamitani, the loser leaves Stardom match. Notably, it's not a loser retires match.
Yes. And it's March 6th for the anniversary show, for the
Okay, that
record.
was it.
And the fun thing also is, of course, this match, they've decided because the match, once they announced this match, the card sold out. The ticket sold out for the card. And they decided yesterday, 2 days ago, that they're going to stream it for free on YouTube. Because I guess they found out people are kind of into this concept, this rivalry.
I mean, I'm not gonna complain about that, but I mean, I don't know what time it'll. Do we have any idea what time that's going to be even on?
I think 2 or 3:30 a.m. Eastern was the time, if I remember correctly. I'm sure somebody in the chat will correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I feel like Stardom runs earlier usually than like New Japan.
Yeah, but it's
And
a it's like a Tuesday or Monday. It's a Monday show, so it's a little bit awkward. Usually they do afternoons, but I don't think that it is this week.
okay,
Um,
yeah. So I guess we probably should the reason we need to bring this up, though, obviously for our purposes, is this is WrestleWatch, where we, uh, go over all these different things. So, do we want to real quick? I guess right now we're looking at the. If you're following on YouTube right now, we're showing the current tier list, the pro wrestling free agency tracker.
Yeah.
That's going away though, because we're going to go ahead and start going over some people that we need to look at for the week.
And in the comments here, one of our lovely contributors, he has mentioned that it will be at 5:45 a.m. Eastern, the main event. Supposedly only the main event is streaming on YouTube.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Kind of backwards from what usually people do with events. Usually do like the pre-show, and it gets people to sign up.
So they're like 5:45 a.m.
Eastern. Yeah.
Eastern. So
it's allegedly the main event will be around then.
Okay.
It might be like it's gonna, that's their guesstimate,
Yeah, so 4:45 my time.
Yeah.
I would say this, the central time zone just really gets the worst, because it's always in that, like, it's too early but it's also too late. So it's like it never makes sense. At least 5:45, you could wake up for that.
Probably.
Like, 4:45, I think that's where it's like you're kind of pushing it.
I don't know, like when I get when I see like there's I like watching Liverpool Football Club in the UK, and when there's a game that's like 7 a.m. Kickoff, I'm like, wow, I'm so sad I'm missing this game. So
I don't know. I feel, I mean, I don't know what time you normally get up, but I'm usually up at like 6:30.
Nope.
That's about the earliest I can do.
Put it like this: if you lived where I did and you got up at your normal time, you can get to New York before I'm awake. So yeah, that's the current tier list. But yeah, the big thing right here is Saya versus Tam. I guess this is kind of like a quasi who you got question here. Because the loser leaves Stardom is the terms of the match. The question there is, as you were pointing out, the phrasing is loser leaves Stardom. It's not a retirement match, and it's not a loser leaves Japan, and it's also like Stardom is one part of Bushi Road, so that's another factor in there. Maybe the loser just does New Japan dates, and we get Tam versus Goto, or Saya versus Gabe Kidd coming up.
Yeah. So let's talk about Saya first, because I think I think tall Saya is the easier one to kind of figure out what's going on here. So first of all, she's obviously carrying the red belt. She's the champ of the promotion at the moment. This match is notably not a championship match.
Yes.
So those right there kind of tell me a lot of things. It says that Saya's probably winning, first of all. And if that's the case, she's not leaving Stardom. And I don't think a lot of people thought she was. I mean, people were joking, oh, she's gonna go to Marigold to be with Utami. But I think that was a lot of tongue in cheek.
It even kind of got brought up as like a kind of thing by talent too. It wasn't just like fans like joking about it. Like talent were kind of like being. I think it was Tam even was like, "Oh yeah, you lost." I think this is all started because she lost Utami.
Yeah, and she's gonna go to Marigold, which is a funny comment. But the fact, if she was doing that, she wouldn't have said that, first of all, in the presser. I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, I think that like we should like consider like Tam did say it. Yeah, I think that like anything where it's like. This would be bad for the existence of Stardom is probably not happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think we could just say right now, I don't think Saya is losing. That's a pretty easy thing to
probably
predict.
not. No, especially because she's like the heel in this rivalry. Like there's a theory that I will get to when we talk about Tam pretty soon right now. We're going to talk about her.
I don't unless you have anything else to say about Saya.
I don't think so, because like the thing is that there is a theory that I wanted to put it out there with the wish theory.
Yes.
So first let's just talk about like the basis here. Tam has had an injury like a few years ago by now, I think. She had a knee injury. There was some talk, and this is Dave Meltzer from Wrestling Observer noting, there was some talk back then, and of course Dave doesn't have necessarily the best sources in Joshi usually, but there was some talk back then that she would retire, and then they gave her the World of Stardom title with the idea that her career time might be limited. So that did happen. I mean, those things did happen in that sequence. So
Yes.
it's possible then that we're looking at Tam might be retiring from in-ring action, maybe full-time retiring, maybe not like part-time, you know. Um, this is like the kind of like retirement match for a backdoor retirement match. That's the first question is this a backdoor retirement match? Um,
And I think it could be. It could be. I think the idea of her going and working working backstage and still being with the company in some way,
yeah,
that's possible. And it could genuinely be a retirement match de facto, but
yeah.
they didn't want to say that because maybe she did want to, she didn't want to shut that door completely.
Yeah, which is why I think it's interesting. The phrasing is loser leaves stardom, because I think that there is a chance that she retires from in ring full time in stardom and she does, like pick up appearances with New Japan for strong shows or for collaboration shows, or she just wants to be freelance in Japan for that matter.
Yeah. Or maybe she wants to do a little excursion in AEW. I don't
That's
know.
that is the next part of the question is like is it loser leaves stardom because the loser is going to leave stardom, you know?
Yeah, that's possible. And I know that. So then I guess the next thing you kind of can go
Like,
into then
yeah.
is if she let's just go with the idea that she is uh gonna
Well,
lose.
yeah. I think
So I
that's more likely than not.
Okay, so I think based off of that, our options are, retirement or move to a backstage role. The other option is wants to do freelance, wants to, do an excursion
Well, yeah.
um
Yeah, like
in
you have
America or
freelance
something like
Japan
that.
and then you have freelance US. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess the other one you kind of alluded to earlier
It's
is
the
that
wish.
yes, that this is just a storyline thing for her eventually being brought back via a wish.
Yeah, so the Cinderella tournament, the winner gets a wish because it's Cinderella, it's cute. Yay,
Yes.
Joshi. So the thing with that is that usually the winner uses that to get like a title shot, Like I wish to go for this title. Cool, yay. But what if somebody that was associated with Tam is like wishes for her to come back? And that is far more compelling than it would be a heel losing this match and then some gruff hate member wishing for Saya to come back. Like, doesn't feel right, It feels like it's possible that somebody could wish for Tam to come back.
I think so.
And,
I
and
think so.
maybe they don't have her stay full time when she comes back. Maybe she is part time and doing backstage stuff anyway. But it allows them to kind of like reopen that door to oh yeah, Tam makes appearances in Stardom. She's not she left Stardom, but she got brought back. Like all the everything's squared away, and you can still have Saya having the heat of like I made her leave. So that's another theory. There.
Yeah. That's
Um,
also now, and I think once again, it's like so when we're talking about the tier list, then so first
yes.
let's start with Kamitani. So I think that
It,
I'm voted no confident.
I
I don't think she belongs on that tier list.
Yeah, I put low confidence on it, and I think that that's the right way to think about it. Because it's not that I don't think that she would belong on the tier list. I think that if she lost this match, she should go on the tier list immediately.
Yes.
But I just don't think that she's gonna lose the match. So I have low confidence in her jumping anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. And now with Tam, I will say this. First of all, the wish thing. I feel like okay, the tournament is starting in like a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's not gonna go that long. So I feel like it's not gonna have a whole lot of impact if it's like, oh, she's gone for like a month and then brought back. So I kind of that's my only issue with that theory.
Yeah, but like at
Um,
the same time, it's like they obviously are trying to capitalize on this storyline right now because they're like we realize that we were able to sell out Kurikan Hall like immediately off the back of this match. We're gonna put it up on YouTube so anybody can watch it. Like they're trying really hard as a promotion to push this story, you know. So maybe they want to try to continue capitalizing on it quickly.
Yeah, that's could be. And so I genuinely think that, she's probably gonna stop in some way. Maybe
Yeah,
it is gonna be that backstage role, but I think there's an off chance that maybe she's just gonna do something different.
yeah.
So and I think that it's very like if so we got to look at our options for
Hmm.
places she can jump to. One is obviously AEW if she were to make that jump.
I
I
think,
personally don't really see that.
yeah, I see like her. I can see her fitting in AEW with where they're at as a women's division, though. I
Yes.
think that they've really done a lot of work, especially like the last 6 months or so. But like essentially in the Mercedes era of the women's division, it has really transformed into a place that I think that somebody like Tam could actually thrive in, and I think that like excuse me, a Japanese talent coming in today has a better shot than they did in the time between like pandemic to Mercedes era of the women's division.
I think so too.
But
I still think it's very low
yeah,
chance that that's
yeah,
happening. It feels like a weird jump if that were to be the case. I think WWE is probably even less likely just because
yeah,
I don't think that they would. I think with her injuries at this point, I just don't know that, WWE would want to invest in her just because they usually, they think longer term with the people they sign, it feels.
yeah. Like I mean, like it's possible that maybe they would look at her as like, oh yeah, you're a solid NXT hand, but then at the same time, it's like, well, like her obvious pair up with Julia there, that's gonna last maybe like a few months before Julia's main roster in. So
Yeah.
like, eh,
That doesn't feel likely either. I
yeah.
agree. So with that, I think that I'm going to go safe stay. I think that she's either going to stay in. I think she's going to stay in Stardom in some regard. I don't think she's necessarily leaving, or if she does leave, she's not going to any other promotion that would be a jump. Like the other one we didn't really discuss, I guess, is a weird offshoot where she could leave and go to New Japan exclusively.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that as like that's like the second one is kind of like the freelance Japan, but you're still working New Japan match.
Yeah,
You're still hired, you're still under contract with New Japan, and you're doing like all their strong shows and collaborative shows.
which I also don't. I still think that's way less likely than her just staying in Stardom,
Yeah,
even if in a backstage role in some way. So I went safe stay.
I think that that's the way that we're gonna go with this. Actually, exactly. Keeping Saya off the list, putting Tam as a safe stay seems the right way to go with this. Let's see what the comments have about this. There are rumors that she's already got a hand in booking backstage, and makes me think this might be the start to transition to that full time. Uh, this is the most Stardom talk this podcast has ever had, and I'm proud of us. Yeah, yeah. It's funny because I noticed some people this week were saying like, oh, well, maybe, especially with the War Dogs talk, like maybe it's time to throw New Japan off the list of places that we look at. And I think like today we've had plenty of New Japan Stardom talk that I think that they should stay on. And then what else we have here? It is telling that Stardom relationship immediately got way better when Rossi left.
Well, yeah, we've known that for like Rossi's. You know, I feel like everything we already know everything about Rossi. I mean, I know I've heard things from promoters that have worked with him directly. Certain things I don't even really want to go into on here. But he has a mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it's a mindset that a lot of people don't like.
Uh,
And I think I'll just leave it at that.
well, and another thing to point out is that All Star Grand Queendom will be in, I believe it's in April, late April usually. So that is like their big event of the year. So it's possible that maybe if the whole uh, Wish theory works out, then maybe they do the rubber match between these two there.
Yeah, It's hard to tell what Stardom's big show is because it's usually I always consider it to be their December show,
I
like
think it's
the end of
yeah.
year, the end of year. But it's just since the promotion shifted, especially post COVID, things are just weird with what is like the most important show, and things have jumped
I
around.
think they've it used to historically be I think Queendom, but like I think that they've kind of shifted due to the closer New Japan relationship to
Yeah,
being the December show because it's part of Wrestle Kingdom season.
and it's like Golden Week,
Yeah.
uh, for April too. So I think that maybe be part of it.
Yeah.
That's always been like a big time for the Japanese promotions.
Well, that has been Rossi Watch. I guess
Yep.
that's the return of Rossi Watch to our podcast. Uh, so let's bring it back over to North America. Then with this next one, it's about Speedball Mike Bailey. There was a coming soon video for Speedball that was played during last week's AW Collision episode, and his name was displayed on screen. Do you think it's time? It's
I think
time to
it's
take him
time.
off.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think the next couple ones are going to be kind of quick hitters because there's not a whole lot to talk about. Speedball has been on the top of the tier list for safe jump for feels like months. It probably is months, right?
Yeah, we put him in the safe jump in November.
Yeah. So he's been up there, almost half a year. And he's finally, I think we finally have him, quasi debuting in AEW, or at least confirming with the video package.
Yeah.
So for that reason alone, I don't know. I don't really have much else to say. Obviously, I think he's confirmed jump
Yeah.
at this point, and should just be removed from the tier list.
Yeah, I think it's Jover as the kids say. It's over. So the next one is Carmella. So she was moved to the alumni section of the WWE roster page. So it's presumably because we didn't really get like a release or anything like that. Her contract expired. She gave birth back in November 2023, and she did not appear in WWE after that. She had some complications during the pregnancy as well. She initially started in wrestling in 2013 when she signed to WWE. Had never worked anywhere else. Her husband is the announcer Corey Graves, also for that matter. So, what are you thinking that like she might just be done with wrestling? That's my vibe.
I was gonna just say it's like I don't necessarily think that this is a situation where she's gonna jump anywhere else. I just don't see it. Even Corey Graves is kind of in a weird situation. I'm not sure what's going on with him. But this just feels like maybe she's done.
Yeah, like
Or at least I didn't even necessarily get the impression that she was all that stunned that she was
no,
done. It wasn't like a Sonya Deville situation
yeah,
where she just was like negotiating a contract and then they just let her go in the middle of negotiations. This one feels like, she was just, this is it.
yeah, like and even if she was not done yet, it feels like it could be like a thing. And this is a theory that I've been cooking up a little bit recently about some of these releases that WWE has done recently. That they're kind of offloading talent that are veterans that are making quote unquote too much money and might be then suggesting to TNA to try to sign them. Because like there might be people that like they're looking at it like, oh well, we could just throw them, having guest spots on TNA, but like that's expensive if we're paying them. And that's kind of the area I see Carmella these days anyway, for that matter. But like, so that's like on top of the fact of like I feel like she's just retiring, or like
Yep.
or like semi-retiring for that matter.
So I voted to don't put her on the list.
Yeah, same. So she's not going to go on. And then we had a comment about Speedball. He had visa issues, right? That is what was being reported. Yeah, that there were some issues with visas. Of course, a couple years ago he worked in the U.S. without a visa and he got banned for a year. So it's
5 years.
possible 5 years. Yeah, so it's possible that he. Due to that, had issues signing to a U.S. company long term and getting a work visa worked out quickly.
Yeah.
That's the theory, at least. That's the theory from the reporting.
Yeah, I can imagine something like that would cause things to maybe go a little slower.
And then another comment here about WWE are releasing people that aren't really types AEW has historically signed. That's another good point there. They're kind of we've been talking about that they've been playing defense and re-signing people that AEW probably would have had interest in, like Chad Gable, for example. Like we've talked about headliners and main eventers too, sure, but Chad Gable is somebody that's like a little bit lower on the card that is definitely somebody AEW would have been interested in, and they re-signed them. And the people that AEW might not have been as interested in, they're just not re-signing or just cutting.
Yeah, that's one of the areas where I think we've seen the biggest shift. Because if you remember, like in those pandemic cuts, like there was a lot of people cut that, AEW would be great
Yeah,
fits for them, and obviously a lot of them we've seen kind of play out with Swerve. Obviously, was a big example of that, and even some of the people that didn't entirely work out, like Miro and Malachi Black, they still, you know, were given prominent roles, at least for a time,
yeah.
and were used well. So those are people that obviously AEW is interested in. I think that, yeah, I think you're right. That's absolutely what's going on. They're playing defense better, and they're not releasing anyone that could be valuable to AEW. And I think you could argue that maybe AEW isn't necessarily doing as well. I don't want to say they're not doing as well, but they are right now. They are releasing people that or people are leaving, I should say, that WWE is interested in. So that, and granted, that's not necessarily a situation of AEW letting them go as much as it's those people wanting to go.
Yeah, and I think also on top of that, it's like you could keep somebody on the books like Malachi or Miro or Ricky, and just keep them on the books and keep them away from WWE. But then at the same time, you're paying this person that doesn't want to be there when you could be using that money for Speedball Mike Bailey.
And it's bad PR.
It's bad PR at the end of the day too. Yeah. Um,
All right,
so
so
this is the tier list. If you wanted to go through it because
yeah,
you love doing that.
I'll go through that real quick. So right now on Safe Jump, the people we think are going to be jumping imminently, we have Hikuleo and Josh Alexander, and that's it.
Yeah, it's
Likely jumps, we
yeah.
have Ray Phoenix, Malachi Black, and Nikki Bella. Lean jumps, we have Zilla Fatu, Ninja Mac, B Priestley, and Miro. For the toss-ups, we have Beth Phoenix, Michael Oku, Baron Corbin, Persephone, Cedric Alexander, Good Brothers, and Kevin Knight. Lean stays are Joe Hendry, Leon Slater, Samantha Irvin, Indy Hartwell, Tegan Knox, Matt Cardona, Mina Shirakawa. Likely stay is Sami Zayn, AJ Styles, Dragon Dia, Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, Mayu Iwatani, Danhausen, and Alex Windsor. And then for safe stay, we have Sari, Utami Hayashishita, Hook, Street Profits, Shinsuke Nakamura, and the newly added Tam Nakano.
Yeah, it's like a safe stay is kind of the Joshi tier.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to have a couple. And here's the other thing: we're going to have a couple other people. I think we're going to be discussing and probably moving around. I think next week, obviously, I think I would be stunned if we're not voting on Malachi Black next week. I'd be stunned if we're not voting.
That's the rumor on it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was in Wrestling Observer this week.
yeah. I also would. I wouldn't be surprised if we voted on uh maybe someone like Miro again. See what's going on with him. Ray Phoenix, maybe we would vote on as well. So it's just a couple people I think that we're going to be looking at. And there's obviously, there's a couple that I'm looking at this list. I may be recommending or nominating a lot just because I think there's some cleaning up we could do with people that have been on here a while that maybe don't need to be on here. So we'll be doing that too.
Yeah, so we usually roll over nominations anyway, and so we have a few on the books here that are in the toss up and down kind of area of the tier list that have kind of been just sitting there for a while, and it seems like nothing's really happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's fine. We like keeping people on here to keep them in our back of our minds, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to reevaluate.
Yeah, and we have a comment from TC asking, didn't Alvarez say some cuts were coming up for AEW? He was saying it sounded like he's as a vibe to me. I don't know. It didn't like I don't believe people sometimes when they just like throw out something like that and then don't tease a name, you
I
know?
mean, I could believe that there are contracts that are coming up that
That's yeah.
maybe aren't going to be renewed, just
That's
because
yeah.
let's be honest, like there's probably I could think of several people that have been largely just working Ring of Honor or just have not been around lately that maybe they're just going to let them go.
Yeah.
or just not renew. I mean, like the Layla Hirsch situation, obviously.
Yeah, like she wasn't released, but she's just left AEW at this point. So
Yeah, and once again, one that I don't necessarily see going to another promotion. So I think like that we track on the tier list, maybe a TNA.
I think there's a outside possibility of her possibly going to Japan again or ending up in NXT, but like at the same time, I think that her injury might like make people a little bit more wary of signing her.
I think I would need to hear from her
Yeah,
before I make that call. Like
too. Yeah,
I need to see her say something
yeah.
before we go there. All right, so that's the tier list.
And this week, we just wanted to remind people that if you are signed up for our Substack, WrestleWatch.substack.com, you will receive a link that allows you to nominate people for our tier list. So if you saw somebody on that last slide on the tier list on the WrestleWatch free agency tracker and you think they're a little bit too high, they're a little bit too low, why is this person still on here? What are these guys thinking? Well, you can get us to talk about it and reevaluate it here every single week on WrestleWatch. So sign up, you'll get the email, and you'll get updates every single week as they come out.
All right. So the next thing we're gonna do before we end the show is we just want to take a chance to look back over talent of the last year that have signed or re-signed, and see how we feel that decision worked out for them.
Yeah, we're going to call it Report Card in honor of the Chicago Teachers Union. Thank you, CM Punk.
Thank you.
For your service. You'll never be allowed to wear anything not branded again on TV after
Listen,
that.
if he does, I will see what he does. I'm curious to see if he does this ever again. Or maybe maybe he used it up as one.
He got his one in, and now he's gonna have to sell his soul to The Rock.
Yep.
I think Solo Sikoa or Jacob Fatu are the most interesting ones, but that's a topic for a different podcast. I don't know. I'm just worried about everything about that storyline. So I'm very glad that I'm kind of like side view WWE's stuff sometimes. Like I watch all the pay-per-views, but like I saw The Rock coming and I was like, oh, no. Oh, not again. I've seen this play out before. So yeah, we're doing report cards. We're gonna grade the talent that signed or re-signed a year ago and see if the decision was good or bad for each promotion involved and the talent themselves. It's going to be a separate grade. We're not doing an overall because it's possible that it's like an A plus for the promotion and an F for the talent. So yeah, we're going to go from A plus and F. What is Stardom is a question we have here in chat. Stardom is a Japanese promotion. They are a sister promotion with New Japan. They primarily do women's wrestling.
Yep.
So first up on the report card is Deonna Purrazzo. She left TNA to sign with AEW. We removed her from the tracker on January 6th of last year after only 35 days of keeping an eye on her. Yeah, I think that this was not the best move. What do you think?
Well, first of all, am I doing grading? Just refresh my memory. Are we grading based on the talent or the promotion?
We're doing each part. So for example, with this, we're going to look at TNA. Did they make a good choice in letting her go, or not being able to re-sign her?
Okay. I think that TNA honestly was fine I think she did everything she possibly could do in TNA. I think she was done with TNA. Like she was pushed very, very well in that promotion. She was and she was presented to look like an absolute star. And then she came to AEW and they started her off okay. They put her in some high profile title matches with Toni Storm. But she pretty much lost immediately. And then after that, it was just kind of downhill from there. Now she's been doing this angle where she's part of like almost like she's like a mob wife with Taya Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Very Sopranos-esque. And it's something that is, it's largely only popping up on, it's like a lower collision act that will occasionally pop over to Dynamite. I think a lot of people aren't even aware that they're like a tag team, and that's a thing they're doing.
Yeah.
And then obviously this past week on Dynamite, she lost to the up and coming Harley Cameron. Clean. So now here's the thing. I think that leaving was the right call for her.
I think that leaving was probably the right call, although I will say she was, even though as you pointed out, she kind of finished everything in TNA that she could do. There is the factor of like she was booked at the top of the card in that area, so like
it's a downgrade for her.
It's a downgrade, I'd say, yeah.
But having said that, I mean, I think that she is someone who definitely struggles on the mic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's not a good promo. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people, forget with her. Like, she talks, and one thing that always comes to mind, it almost sounds like she's ready to cry whenever she's giving a promo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in the sense that her voice is always kind of cracking. She sounds very nervous, that she's just not really comfortable talking on the mic. And that really comes across, and it makes her, not as intimidating as she could be. That's something that I've always noticed with her. I think she's, a solid hand in the ring. I mean, obviously she carried Harley Cameron to a pretty decent, okay match on Dynamite. And Harley Cameron is obviously someone who is very, very new to this and, needs to be carried.
Mm-hmm.
So she did a good job with that.
Yeah.
And I think that, so here's how I would give her a C. And the reason I'm giving her,
so for her herself, her choice of promotion, you're saying that she did a C.
A C. Now for TNA, I honestly think that TNA is not any different or better off or worse off with her gone. I really do think she just it was time for her to move on. So I go with a B for TNA, but for her it's a C. And the reason I say it's a C is because I think that AEW has done good enough in trying to give her opportunities to be presented in a high way.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think she's ever risen to that occasion, and I just don't think she's ever really gotten over in AEW. So I have to go C, because I think they tried. I really do. I really do think AEW tried with her.
Yeah, so I think that for her herself, I think that like C minus or D plus is where I would put it, just because like she was presented, yeah, sure, as our friend Luke in the chat is saying, she had done everything in TNA, but at the same time, it was probably like a slight bump up in pay, but a very much pushed down the card. So that's why I think like a C minus for her decision making on this might be right. I think that she would have been cushy in TNA at the top of the card. For AEW picking her up, yeah, like a C. She's been a solid hand on she's giving them depth. I think that they expected more out of her than they've gotten this year. And then for TNA, I think it's kind of a mixed bag, because I think that their women's division has been pretty weak this year, and losing her and Jordan Grace has really showed how there's not a lot of depth there in their women's division.
But I'll say this, the women that they have lost, and there's one we're going to talk about later on in this, I think that I think Deonna's like the least important one of those.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of, like, if I had to like lose one of them, like, Deonna's probably it.
Yeah, that's fair. So I think like we could put it, like you said, a B of a decision for TNA. I think you said. Yeah. I can get that. I can understand that. Yeah. So next up, we're going to chat about another TNA related artist, is Nic Nemeth. He was released by WWE and then signed to TNA. Right after his 90-day period ended, he actually appeared at Wrestle Kingdom. And we thought for a period, he might be going to New Japan. He did pick up the global belt. So he was crowned a champion in New Japan, the number 2 title in New Japan. He was crowned the top champion in TNA. He put over Joe Hendry at their most recent pay-per-view, so TNA got to have a former world champion of WWE put over their next top over act. In WWE, for that matter, I'd say that he was kind of just mid card fodder at this point. He went down to NXT and was their champ for a little bit, and that's all he was really doing. He was a solid hand, though. So that's kind of like the scene setting there.
So real quick, just to make sure we're clear. So the grades I'm doing are for WWE letting him go,
Yes.
and for Nic Nemeth in
For WWE releasing him, one grade. For TNA signing him, how'd that go for them? And then for Nic Nemeth as a person, was this the right call?
Okay, so then I'm going to go back and say real quick for Deonna Purrazzo, I would also say a C for. I would say a C for the promotion
Yeah.
for AEW. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So continuing on then. All right. So first of all, for Nic Nemeth, I think for WWE releasing him, I would give that a solid B plus because he needed to go.
Yeah.
Like he was there for so long. I mean, I don't think people realize how long he's been there, and it might have been he might have been there for like 20
It was
years.
like 20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
He was there in the aughts,
Yeah,
you know?
he exactly. He had time to shine. He had a couple opportunities. Obviously, his cash in on Alberto Del Rio in was it 2013. That was a big moment.
The best
And
moment from that Mania,
yeah,
possibly.
so at this point, I don't think that was a bad decision on WWE's part to let him go. There was nothing else they were going to do. They were never going to push him again.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I would say to pit stop there, and I'll react on that, and then we can go on to TNA then. I think that you're totally right. I think that like it is a loss of a solid hand for WWE. But like that was all he was at this point for them. So I think a B is the right rating. Yeah.
yeah. And then for TNA picking him up, I think it was a solid A minus.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he did a really good job in especially right out the gate. I think jumping over to New Japan was a smart move.
Oh yeah.
I think just doing all the different things that he did a really good job of, trying his best to really make his whole thing, his whole departure a big deal and kind of in a way where it's like, I'm going to show you all. I think it's obviously sputtered a bit and kind of slowed down since then.
Mm-hmm.
But, right off the bat, I thought it was great. I went an A minus for TNA picking him up.
Yeah, like for me, this is also an A minus. I'm not the biggest fan of his run, but I think it worked out pretty well for TNA. You know, it's not a homegrown star that they put the belt on, sure, but like they used him to get over Joe Hendry up to being a main event player. They sold tickets very well. I think like A minus is a good rating for TNA.
Yeah, and I would say then for him specifically, I think right off the bat, like I'd say with the first couple months, maybe up through like April or May when he was bouncing around, New Japan USA, Wrestle Kingdom, TNA, just like
Mm-hmm.
being like a world traveler. That was a solid A run for him. I think but I think over the last 6 months or so, I think a lot less focus has been on him, and maybe that's even part of the fact that so many other people in TNA have kind of surpassed him in terms of getting being talked about and getting buzz, and maybe the WWE TNA relationship is part of that.
Yeah.
Because you have obviously Joe Hendry.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, oh well, he's gonna go back to NXT. Like, no, like you're gonna have Joe Hendry go over to NXT. You know?
Right, but it's like the fact that I think that WWE TNA relationship really did hurt him because I think a lot of buzz was seeing what he would do outside of the WWE system, and now it feels like the WWE system just re-engulfed him,
Yeah.
and now that kind of killed a lot of his buzz and momentum, which made him interesting because now it's just now he's just back in a feeder promotion for the company he left.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have to, in totality, factoring in like his entire like past year, I have to say he's probably a B minus now.
I feel like it started as like an A plus though. You know?
Oh yeah.
Like he was like showing up and showing out, and everybody was like, damn, where's this guy been? You know? Like seeing him everywhere around the world and really pushing himself. So like I think like a solid A personally
He was trying.
on the
He
year.
was absolutely trying.
I think like he really got it, like for his age and where he's at in his career. Um, this is so much better than what he would have been doing for the past year if he had stayed in if he had not been released by WWE.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So next up here is El Hijo del Vikingo. So for this one, it's a re-signing with AAA. So we're only doing a grading for AAA and for Vikingo himself. No other companies that might have been looking at him.
Yeah. All right. So I would say it's an A for AAA re-signing him because obviously he's probably one of their best. He's in ring. I would say he's their best talent.
Yeah.
Especially when AAA right now is not a great company in ring. It has it's really bad.
Yeah. Uh,
I think that keeping him around was important because I don't know. I think he's one of the few things that a lot of people are really interested in that company right at the moment. So I would go A.
yeah, I would say this feels like a huge deal for them to have gotten him to resign and stay. Like, regardless of how they use him afterwards, the fact that we're able to keep somebody touted as arguably the best wrestler in the country is huge for a promotion of their size and prestige. So, like, maybe this is their fourth A. Maybe they're now quadruple A
Yeah,
for
yeah,
this
right.
signing, you know?
Quad A.
And they kept him away from going elsewhere where he probably could have gotten paid a little bit better too. So yeah, the injury happened, but like they got their money's worth, I think, out of him for the past year so far. So I think that's a solid A. Yeah.
Yeah. So because of that, though, now we have to talk about was this a good move for him? And I
Yeah.
would say probably not. I think that I would go a solid D because as soon as he signed, a lot of the buzz around him killed off. He's been injured left and right, and frankly, a lot of the talk around his injuries is very quiet and secretive, and we don't really half the time know exactly what's going on with him.
Mhm.
But I feel like it's a lot of the buzz around him has really died
Yeah.
off, and there's even talk that he might be kind of washed at this point with these injuries that he's sustained. So he is nowhere near as hot as he was before he signed.
Yeah, he had two injuries this past year. One when he was still the Triple A Mega Champion, and then later in the year, I think it was in a match at TNA that he got injured in. So yeah, this grade is tough for me because on one hand, we have all that we're saying about like he was attracting a lot of attention from like specifically AEW. So you could dream up what his year could have been like, sure. But the thing is, I don't. I think that people are dreamcasting a little bit too hot about that. Around the time that he re-signed with AAA was when AEW were finalizing Okada and Ospreay, right? So they're in the wings, about to come to AEW, and that is going to eat up the top of the card soon enough in AEW. And the way that he was presented by AEW before was a special attraction AAA champion, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that's going to translate then to him being a weekly TV character when you also have brought in Okada and Osprey at the same time. Um, I don't know where he slots in. And yeah, so like people are saying TC's like hard not to compare what's happened with him to Commander and Hologram. Sure, Commander is the ROH TV champion, and Hologram appeared on Collision to introduce him, and he has not done much else, and he got injured, and seems like he might be in the TNT title scene at some point, but like maybe not. Like he's not getting pushed to the title really. So like if that's the comparison, that's not great then, right? Like I don't know what we're doing here when we're like, oh yeah, he could have been in AEW, it would have been great. Yeah, he would have gone paid, but like if we're saying, oh yeah, look at Commander and Hologram's position, it's like that wouldn't have been good then, right?
But I would argue that Vikingo had way more buzz than Commander and Hologram ever did. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think they're on the same level. I know that a lot of people would say like, oh, Commander and Vikingo are, you know, they're two sides of the same coin. They're both just as talented, but Vikingo was way more over and had a lot more of a spotlight shown on him.
Yeah.
I mean, the Kenny Omega match alone was a big deal for Vikingo. I think that just command. I don't think it's a fair comparison. I don't think I don't think they're on the same level. I'll say that. But I do understand the argument, and I do think you could argue that he might be lost in the same way.
Yeah, and then you look at what happened in AAA then. So they kept the belt on him. He had no singles losses the entire year. He won the Rey de Reyes tournament. So they booked him very, very strongly. So I don't see it as bad of a deal as other people are. Like, yeah, he allegedly didn't take money. That's what the theory is. Maybe he did take money. We just don't know to stay with AAA. So I'm going B minus or C plus.
Okay, that's fair. I guess I put more emphasis on the fact that AAA right now is where it is.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair too.
And I think that that has to be factored in as well.
So yeah, we'll call it like a low C, high D then as a middle ground. Next up here is Andrade. This is a fun one.
Main event Andrade.
Main event, not on his place on the card.
Yeah.
He requested his release from AEW, and his last match was against Miro, funnily enough, where he did the job for Miro, and then Miro never showed up again either. He then signed with WWE immediately. He debuted at the Royal Rumble last year, so that's when we took him off the tracker. January 29th, 2024 was when we took him off the tracker. We had kept him on there for 225 days because we were pretty darn confident he was jumping. And you know what? He did. Immediately once he got the chance to jump, he jumped. So how do we grade this for AEW releasing him first, then WWE picking him up, and Andrade himself?
So I'm remembering that meme, that funny tweet that it says, the haters said I couldn't do it, and they were correct. Honestly, great call from the haters. That is what I think of when I think of Andrade right now. He left AEW in a pretty notable fashion because it was a situation where he'd been disgruntled for a while to the point where he punched Sammy Guevara in an attempt to get out of his contract.
I was at that show and heard about it going on backstage, and I was like, no way.
So that's obviously one point. He obviously didn't get released right away. They tried to kind of make things okay with it, but it was notable that he was never I don't think he was ever on a show with Sammy Guevara ever again. Yeah. And then he went back to WWE, and at the time it was talk of, because he also wanted to be with his wife Charlotte. He's now back. He's allegedly now divorced, and he is, I think you could say, he's in a worse place on the card. And probably, and if I had to guess, I don't think I think at best he's making probably the same amount of money he was making in AEW.
Yeah, I would say probably the same amount of money. Yeah. So I think AEW, when you look at it, especially when you look at how they were trying to push him at the end, they gave him a win over Danielson in the CC. They, they were trying to build him up and give him something,
I think AEW, especially even the fans, I think the best way to describe how AEW probably felt, and probably how a lot of the AEW viewership felt with Andrade, especially knowing what everyone knew, is just exhausted. He was just exhausting. In so many ways.
I think that there's a degree of relief that he was gone, but at the same time, he was a very good worker when he was trying. And when they were pushing him fairly well when they could, because he also didn't like losing in AEW for that matter, so that makes it a little bit hard to build a program around somebody.
Yeah, the no job squad really were just exhausting is the perfect way to describe them, I think. And I think that for that reason, I think AEW is better off not having him around. I would go a solid B plus for AEW getting rid of him or letting him go. For him personally, I would say we're looking at a C minus for the move.
It's hard. So I did get some notes already from some of our folks. And we're gonna do nice little write up on this for Substack. And Luke, one of our regular contributors, he wrote success for him has been moderate. He's been circling the U.S. title picture for now, and he had a great feud with Carmelo Hayes, which ended on a whimper. His ceiling could be higher if he stayed with AEW, but leaving hasn't been the worst move we've seen. I think that like all that is true, but at the same time, like his ceiling in AEW, I think it's hard because like yeah, he thought way too highly of himself and didn't want to ever lose in AEW, but they were willing to give him a high ceiling if he was willing to play ball. That's seen from the CC, I think. And I think that the U.S. title picture and being in that vortex, that it's kind of a mid card vortex that I don't feel like he's gonna get out of. So yeah, I think that it's not been the greatest choice for him, but at the same time, like I think that he feels like it was a great choice because he's back in the real company, in his mind. So feels like a C minus maybe, like C
Yeah,
plus. I don't
it's
know.
kind of the same
Some
range.
C range. For WWE though, I think this was a good pickup. You know, he's a very solid hand. He's a great performer. They they're bolstering their U.S. title scene. He's somebody that like you could see as a world champion, possibly.
And and also you could argue that it's a PR win.
It's a big PR. Like that's the biggest factor of all is they got someone that said, "I don't like it over here. I want to go back to WWE."
Yeah.
Like that's a B plus. You know, like he's not world breaking over there yet, but like for all of the PR things, like that alone gets you up into like a B plus tier. I think. You know.
I agree. So with that, I think for WWE, I would probably go a B as well.
Yeah. The next up, we have Naomi. She left TNA to sign with WWE. She was another one that re-debuted at the Royal Rumble. We removed her from the tracker after that point, after 225 days of keeping an eye on her. Or that doesn't sound right. I think I might have just kept that from the previous slide there. But yes, I will get the actual
Yeah.
context on that. And yeah,
And we
so
know,
Naomi.
generally we know the situation with her. She stormed out of WWE.
Yes.
There was a fork in the road. She basically followed the Mercedes Monet template. They both left the exact same time. Very upset. Uh, they were bad mouthed on WWE television, and in a way that was, in a lot of ways, kind of pretty unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
And then they both went outside of WWE to do different things. Monet went to New Japan, and Naomi went to TNA.
Yeah.
And they had moderate success in both. I would argue that Naomi had a lot more success in TNA than Mercedes Monet had in New Japan because she kind of botched her debut. She had a really great match with Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that match, she got injured and she was on the shelf for a while. And meanwhile, Naomi became the top woman in TNA and was having some of the best matches of her career. Was in a really hot feud with uh, Jordan Grace that still kind of carried over to her Rumble debut, and everyone knew about it
Yep.
and knew that they had that feud. Um, but and then eventually she went back, and then Monet went to AEW.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then since Monet went to AEW, she's obviously presented fantastically. Really, really, obviously, I don't think I need to talk about how great Monet's last 6 months have been. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, and Naomi, since going back to WWE, has been a afterthought.
Yeah.
And so it's really, I think this one is probably the biggest blunder. I think that her going back killed a lot of the buzz around her because of why she left and how she left, and it just, I think it left a lot of left a it was a kind of a head scratcher for a lot of people, and it felt very, crawling back in a lot of ways for her. So,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it was a situation where her choices were either go stay in TNA or go to WWE because maybe AEW, didn't make an offer. Maybe if AEW did make an offer, she would have went there. I don't know,
Mhm.
but and if her choices were between I'm going to go to WWE or I'm going to go to TNA, she just would rather be at WWE and have the bigger deal. And maybe they offered her more money, which that's fine, I guess. But I definitely think she would have benefited had she stayed in TNA a little bit longer. I don't think she necessarily had, the she I don't think she did everything she could have done. Yes, she had the belt, but I don't think she had the run. I think she still could have had the run. And I would have stayed if I was her. And so for that reason, I will say TNA picking her up was an A plus.
When
Absolute A
they
plus.
picked her up, yeah. What about not getting able to keep her? Like, what do you think of TNA not being able to? Do you think like that they
Yeah,
should have
I would.
kept her?
I think they should have tried, and then I think so. I think losing her. I think losing her had more of an impact than losing Deonna for sure. So I would say losing her was probably a D.
Yeah,
I'd say a D minus because I remember the buzz around that Chicago show that sold out, and there were people just trying to get tickets. The one that had a Speedball versus Osprey,
yeah.
but I remember specifically a lot of the buzz was around Naomi.
Hmm.
Like people wanted to see Naomi. There was unreal. I'm sorry, nobody like Deonna Purrazzo never had that.
I,
Jordan Grace never had that. Tessa Blanchard maybe had that for a little while before everything happened. But uh, Naomi was huge in TNA.
yeah,
I
and
think it
that
was a real lost opportunity with her.
yeah, and that last match that she had with Jordan Grace at Hard to Kill last year was really good match, possibly the best match on that card, even.
Yeah, she
So
she really could have grown, and I
yes,
think she's regressed to say the least.
yeah. So for WWE then, being able to sign her after all of that, after she stormed out, because of the booking of the women's division in general, but specifically the women's tags. She goes to TNA. She has a world championship run that everybody's loving. And then WWE is able to sign her. And what do they do with her? They kind of nothing for a while, and then she's back up Jade now. And she's back to being a tag champion. So I think for WWE, that is a coup. Like, they got somebody to come back to them and put them exactly where they were when they left.
I'm gonna say a B, and I'm gonna tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that there was a scenario that would have benefited Naomi
Mm-hmm.
and WWE, and that's if she stayed in TNA. Because
Yes.
it's kind of the opposite of Nic Nemeth,
Yeah.
where Nic Nemeth nobody really wants him back in WWE because he's already done everything. Imagine if Naomi had stayed in TNA and was still in TNA to this day, and suddenly this TNA WWE partnership happened. And now, after all this time that she's gone, she finally makes her triumphant return at the Rumble or back in some way with the partnership. I think that would benefit WWE and Naomi a lot more. So I think her going back was not good for her, obviously. But I
Yeah.
think I feel like I can't say it was an A, like a full coup for WWE
That's
because
fair.
I think that it would have been better for both the company and her if she had stayed in TNA a little bit longer, especially now that we know what's going on with this partnership. So I would say a B.
Yeah, I think that's fair of an analysis, especially because like there was a lot of momentum that they could have captured and then they didn't.
Yeah.
And then for Naomi herself, this is not good,
No.
right? This is at
No,
least
it's
a
bad.
D. At,
I said D minus.
yeah, like this was bad decision from her, I think.
Yeah, it's
It's unfortunate, I think, is the best way of putting it too. Because I think that she had a lot of potential with staying with TNA.
yeah, it's really unfortunate, unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all there is to it.
And like now we don't even know if I don't know if the she's going to be on the Mania card because like who knows if they don't seem to know how to book women on the main roster again somehow. They got back to that point, you know. So Yeah.
Well, hopefully it works out for her. Hopefully she's happy with her decision.
Yeah, I hope that she's happy with it. And she's, she's in the company with her husband and everything like that. So there's that factor too. I'm sure she's getting endorsement deals and things like that too. Like I'm sure that there are other factors than just the booking at play too.
Yeah.
And she's hanging out with a friend. It looks like too. So like
Okay.
yeah,
Good for her. All
good
right.
for her. So freelancer to signing with AEW, we have Bryan Keith. So we're gonna look at just AEW's decision to sign him and Bryan Keith's decision to sign there. We have been tracking him for over 100 days, and then he officially signed in February of last year. This is the last one that we're going to cover today. So, how do you think that this was a decision for Bryan Keith? Should he have stayed freelance, or do you think that he's benefited from going under the learning tree? And I'm gonna refill my coffee, so if you want to vamp also.
Yeah, I'll go off a little bit. So here's the deal with Bryan Keith. I think that he was one of the hottest acts on the US Indies at a time when the US Indies were not great. They were just very, very bad. To this day, they have not recovered. I would argue that there hasn't, outside of maybe Defy and DPW, you're not seeing a whole lot of great matches out of the US Indies. Bryan Keith was one of the few bright spots. And then, so it made all the sense in the world for AEW to sign this guy. And he's come in and I think they've done okay with him. I know a lot of people do not like the learning tree stuff. They're done with Chris Jericho. Having said that, I think that it's a situation where they are not ready to push Bryan Keith, and that's fine. I don't think they necessarily need to push this guy outside, right outside the gate, right out the gate. I think having him work in the background, having, decent matches, getting highlighted showcases, obviously, as he did with, this past Dynamite, he had a really good match with Ospreay. And I think that is something that will benefit him long term, and it's going to benefit AEW as well. And even if he doesn't stay in AEW, I think his stock has risen and is going to continue to rise, that when his contract is up, he is going to be a lot more valuable than he was before he signed. I think that he benefited significantly from this deal. Like where he was before he signed and where he was now, people know who he is. People have seen him wrestle. People see what he's capable of. I would say it was for AEW bring him in. I think it was a solid B, just because he's not someone that they're gonna have a lot of value in right off the bat. They got to build the value up in him, but I think he's a good person to kind of invest in. And I think for him coming in, I think this was a solid A. I think he benefited more than AEW did for sure, because he's people know who he is, as I said. So that's a big benefit to him.
Yeah, he kind of went from being like a regional, well-known indie star. Like I would say that like he was well known to most people that follow indies, sure, but like definitely regional. And you see that when they do shows in Texas, he is over when they're in Texas, but then outside Texas, not as over,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that like when you compare him to past indie stars, pre-pandemic kind of era indies, or you look at like, UK indie kind of people, he wasn't as notable as some people, but it was pretty well known. So I think that he's definitely raised his stock of notoriety. It was a slow roll, as has been mentioned in the chat. They were slow rolling him with the run with the learning tree. Now it gave him a focus and gave him a story to have matches through. Yes, he didn't win all the matches, sure, but that match with he's had matches with what was the one that we just had, Bandito. Amazing match.
He just had one at Ospreay too, right?
He just had Ospreay as well, yeah. So like he's now it's interesting with the learning tree storyline, because for a while it was just like kind of boring and Jericho was the focus and that was it, right? And like these other guys are just lackeys, it felt like. And now finally it's like Big Bill is like the main character. of the learning tree, it feels like. And Bryan Keith is being used for these really amazing showcase matches to kind of be like, yeah, no, we have like an ace, we have a hidden ace, tucked in our sleeve here with Bryan Keith. So I think that now finally he's really come into his own on the roster, and people like are not just respecting Chris Jericho, but respecting Bryan Keith. So I think that like at this point in time, I would say it was for AEW to bring him in. I would say like a B plus, because like he hasn't been like I think that there are people that we will get to when it rolls around to next month and we look at Mercedes or Okada and Osprey and things like that, and we're gonna be like, now these are A pluses,
Yes.
So I'm gonna temper it a little bit and be like, it's a B plus, for AEW, kind of acquisition. For Bryan Keith himself, it is definitely an A. Yeah, like A minus. Like he is now, I would say now that we're a year in, we can see like the fruits of everything that's been going on for the entire year, which is also why I like that we're doing this as looking back a year later, so that we're not like instant reacting like, oh yeah, this was a bad move, this is a great move for this person, like this is like us slow rolling and baking this for a nice stew, and I think the stew has settled very nicely for Bryan Keith here in AEW.
Yeah, this is. I think we're on the same page. Then I agree.
So that is our first edition of the report card feature here. I think everything was pretty fun.
Yeah, I like this. I think we'll keep doing this. This is a fun little segment. We'll pick up every now and then.
A monthly feature here for Wrestle Talk. How about that?
Yeah, I like that. All right. So with that, is there anything else that you want to discuss?
Oh, I just wanted to mention next month for that. That is when Marigold was founded. So next month, when we do this feature, it's WrestleWatch time again. We're gonna talk about Marigold, if that was a good choice. A little teaser.
Well, I'll say that. Well, yeah, we'll talk later. I'm not gonna say anything yet.
You gotta save it for the recording. I get you.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's good. So if there's anything else, I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah, that has been another week's edition of the WrestleWatch podcast. Reminder to subscribe to us on Substack if you would like to nominate names for us to discuss here on WrestleWatch. We also are on Twitter and Blue Sky, so you can follow us there. And make sure to please give this a like on the YouTube. It definitely helps the old algorithm. We would love to have more bots comment on these videos if possible. Yes, indeed. Hell yeah, Tiffy time is how I'm gonna... what is Stardom? Who knows? I hope that you all figured out what Stardom is from today's episode. Hatwatch 2.0 Electric Boogaloo next time. Maybe. Or next month at some point. Or on Lesser Watch. And yeah, hopefully, I guess we'll see if Tam doesn't retire in a few days.
Yep. All right. So with that,